right there, I can see a role for the private sector through quite a number of their CSR initiatives. The question is, which are the key initiatives that might be able to help catalyze the delivery of the Millennium Development Goals? But if there's anything, they say success has many mothers, but failure is an orphan. And I mean, I live in Abuja, and yesterday, as you know, there were bomb blasts in Abuja. And I was busy sort of saying, well, I grew up partly in Lagos, you know, but you people, the traffic is bad, it's too congested. And I was feeling very happy about living in Abuja. And the person said, Abuja, you say there are good roads, this and that. Well, don't you have bombs all the time? And I had to concede. The issue is that people do not want to align themselves with failure. And I think, I've never worked in the private sector, but I think the private sector is more inclined to provide support and to partner in regions or in countries or in societies or communities where they see progress. Unfortunately, what happens a lot in the reportage about Africa is all negative. If I was a billionaire somewhere and all I heard about a continent or a region was negative, I see no reason why I may want to involve myself in CSR activities. I won't go through the entire list, but according to the UNDP, some progress is taking place within the continent. You have for example, you have in Ghana, you have that they've been able to reduce undernourishment. You find that in Tanzania, for example, they've been able to get more people into schools. In Malawi and Rwanda, family planning is a bit more effective. And I'll choose another one. In Uganda, they've been able to reduce significantly the rate of HIV infections. And that's, I believe you can read through some of the other figures and statistics out there. So it shows us that, yes, there might be challenges. It may take some time to get there, but there is progress. And there are some success stories. And those success stories, I believe, should be able to attract the kind of support. And I think the private sector itself should see itself as a catalyst and a vehicle to try and help to ramp up support in developing in delivering the Millennium Development Goals. In Nigeria also, there's been some progress. I will not take you through the statistics as such, but there's been some progress. We've only just had, I believe, what many people would consider one of the more credible, I won't use the word free and fair, more credible elections. And perhaps the changes that may come in the governance architecture of our country may create the enabling environment for more development to take place. I'm trying to avoid overwhelming you with too many figures, but up there you can see in almost all the 8 goals areas, there are significant achievements that have been made in terms of supporting and achieving the Millennium Development Goals. If you're interested in that, of course, I'm sure the conference organizers will provide the statistics. So, corporate social responsibility, the Millennium Development Goals, and poverty reduction in Africa. Like I said, I'm not an expert in corporate social responsibility, and neither have I worked in the private sector. But I think it seems to make sense that companies can try to hinge some of their goals, some of the CSR agenda on some of the goals and the initiatives that are already on ground. And I'll talk about that in a bit more detail later on. In our country, Nigeria, our governors have this policy fad of developing a 10-point agenda, a 6-point agenda, a 7-point agenda. So we call them the X-point agendas. At times, it is useful, and even some of the development partners are learning this, it is useful to look at what a country, a state, or a society has identified as what their own priorities are. You look at the needs assessments they have done and try to be part of that process and support that process instead of coming and duplicating or imposing, in certain instances, their own ideas. There's a little anecdote a friend from another African country told me, and I shared it with someone yesterday. Somewhere in Uganda, some people went to a village, and they noticed that in that village that the women had to walk a long distance to go and fetch water. So corporate social responsibility, or whether it was just social responsibility, they said, oh, well, it makes sense. Why don't we give them a well and put it in the center, near the village square? Now, to them, that made a lot of sense, right? Okay. So they put it in the well, had a big party, the chief came and everybody was happy. The next day, nobody used the well. The next week, no one used the well. The third week, no one used the well. They started getting worried that what's going on. So they called a small meeting. I remember I shared this story with a friend of mine. I see her in the audience just yesterday. And so they called a small meeting and they said, look, ladies, this well is here for you to use. Why aren't you using this wells? And the ladies said, they said, there's water in it. And the ladies said, we don't walk all the way to the river to get water. We walk all the way to the river to get away from our husbands. It's the only place that they could actually sequester themselves to be able to talk about their trade, to talk about matchmaking their children, to talk about societal and social issues. And they found, and unfortunately, those who wanted to engage in a CSR initiative did not ask them. So unfortunately, what could have been done out of good intention apparently did not translate into the results that they wanted. That anecdote, I think, clearly illustrates how important it is to engage with the communities and the societies in which you want to support before embarking on some of these initiatives. In my pedestrian perspective of corporate social responsibility and some of the things I've picked out, it seems that there are a few key issues that we can use as an entry point into our dialogue or into our conversation. One is that in some of the conversations I've been having, I've noticed that a lot of people talk about CSR, but they talk about it almost like being a good Samaritan. Just do good. Do well now, And from what I've been learned from some of the experts around the table, it's a whole lot more than that. What we probably need to start thinking about is if we want companies to engage in effective CSR systems, perhaps the people in those companies who are involved in CSR themselves need more training. So my first recommendation is that there needs to be an adequate training package that can enable and equip those companies to understand conceptually, structurally, and systematically how to engage in CSR initiatives. The second one I talked about to a degree, which is about the top-down approach. We know better than you. We know what you need. We'll just give it to you, even if you really don't need it. The importance of stakeholder consultation and dialogue is absolutely critical. I was talking to someone who worked at the MTN Foundation just yesterday, and she mentioned to me how before they engage in quite a number of their initiatives, they engage in a lot of stakeholder consultations and needs assessments. And I think it's absolutely critical that a more systematic approach is adopted. Then, of course, there's the issue of the fact that at times some of these initiatives have nothing to do with the people. It's about publicity. Come on, we know that, and it's true. It's about publicity, it's about brand image, and I think that what tends to happen is that when it's not people-orientated, then it's not sustainable, it's not effective, and once the company pulls out, that's the end of it. Again, that connects with what I was saying earlier on about what I just mentioned, which is about it's seen more as an obligation than a necessity. And to a degree, there's a parallel